So it looks like it's just one after one, so we're going to get started. I'm Janet Jansen. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager, and I'm essentially here to get us moving. So today our topic is the case for implementing electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and we'll be assessing the early adopter benefits. And I'm here with Abdullah Rayhan. He's the lead for our EV charging new business development, and with Brett, who's the Senior Associate Corporate Development, who really brings that financial perspective. So I'll leave it to our two experts to get the webinar started. And once again, thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Janet, and thanks everybody for joining today. As the Director of New Ventures at Roya, I lead the development as well as go-to-market strategy for new business opportunities. More specifically, lately I've been focused on rolling out energy transition technologies, and naturally EV charging's one of the clean technologies that Roya is currently rolling out through its energy transition platform. Having been involved in the e-mobility industry for several years now, I've overseen rollout of statewide public charging infrastructure, as well as B2C and B2B EV charging products and services. Turning it over to my colleague, Brett, now.
Thanks, Abdullah. Nice to be with everybody today. I'm Brett Krupp, a senior associate on the corporate development team. I've been with Oya for about 9 months, and throughout that time, I've worked very closely with Abdullah, rolling out a lot of the new ventures, but I'm involved across the Oya Renewables platform more broadly in corporate developments, looking at new market analysis, M&A, and project development at Oya Renewables.
Thank you, Brett. So before starting off, I just wanted to quickly touch on Oya and our capabilities as a vertically integrated energy infrastructure developer and operator. Since 2009, we've become one of the top 10 community solar developers in the US, and essentially the second largest developer in the state of New York. And now we're leveraging our longstanding expertise as an energy infrastructure developer and in order to roll out energy transition technologies for our clients. So we're essentially a long-term energy transition partner for our clients, and we've built a turnkey platform that provides such solutions to our clients at minimal upfront cost, while really partnering with them and determining what makes the most sense for them. Based on data from more than 18 countries that are currently leading EV adoption, 5% of annual EV sales is considered as a tipping point, where really EV adoption turns from an early adopter technology over to mainstream adoption. And interestingly enough, this is the same trend that we've noticed for other technologies. A great example of that will be cell phones. In 2022, 5.3% of annual vehicles sold were EVs in the US. So essentially, the US crossed that tipping point. So EVs are very much here, and they're expected to make up to 25% of all new vehicles sold in just about 3 years, so by 2025. And that's about 5 times the amount of EVs that are currently being sold. So it's the number of EVs is going to grow, and it's going to grow at a really, really fast rate. And we're also seeing that on a global scale, in some jurisdictions, it's much more advanced. So the good news is that we can actually learn from the experience of these jurisdictions and see what that means in terms of EV charging infrastructure. And essentially, the more mature jurisdictions have given us the prime lesson that as EV adoption increases or during its emerging stages, businesses such as those attending this webinar today have a crucial role to play in terms of meeting those charging infrastructure demand and essentially providing and fulfilling that need for public charging infrastructure. So, the main purpose of today's webinar is to really provide a data-backed guide towards creating a business case for EV charging. EV charging is a relatively straightforward, clean tech that intersects with the three main objectives of any successful business. Essentially realizing financial returns, environmental returns, while making sure that you're differentiating and positioning the business for long-term success. And before undertaking any infrastructure investments, we realize whether the business is, small, medium, or large. There is a rigorous criteria for evaluating such investments, and really today's webinar and the framework that it lays out will help such businesses prove out the business case for EV charging. As the number of EVs on the road increases, it's no longer an amenity to have EV charging stations at a site. Sure, it's still a desirable feature of every property, but now it's becoming an operational necessity. With the growing number of EV drivers, as well as automakers announcing essentially a halt towards internal combustion engine vehicles, it's becoming an end user expectation and a business need to have EV charging stations. For example, if you're a dealership, you need EV charging to comply with OEM requirements in order to sell EVs. If you're in the retail sector, you need EV charging to keep on attracting customers and really boosting those retail sales. So if your company falls under any of these business sectors that we've identified on screen, it's highly likely that you're one of the high potential for EV charging destinations. So let's evaluate how EV charging really helps you differentiate your business from competitors. EV charging at commercial properties will attract new customers and help retain those existing customers that are switching away from EVs. That are switching away from internal combustion engine vehicles. EV charging is a convenient service that helps draw those customers that are looking for public charging to your site. With EV chargers, some drivers only plan their trips around those destinations that have these charging outlets. So you're really putting your destination on the map for people who only drive EVs. And that helps you build awareness and increase visibility of your business. Moreover, the kind of businesses that you're attracting are the kind of EV drivers that you're attracting to your site are those that have high purchasing power. The typical demographic of EV drivers includes those that have a higher than average household income, and they're likely to be professionals and affluent. Now, what this means for retail business, for example, is that we've found over the last few years with EV chargers that are operational at such sites, more than 80% of EV drivers are shopping while they charge their vehicles. Approximately 48% of these charging sessions lead to incremental shopping visits. So essentially, you're creating an ancillary revenue stream that Brett will describe in just a bit. Moving on to how EV charging helps you increase your property's value. So as a commercial property, investments in assets that demonstrate sustainability and the ability to achieve corporate sustainability goals are more attractive targets for ETFs and for other companies looking to make investments, and the interest in sustainable assets has increased dramatically. For example, the interest in sustainable assets increased from an investment perspective by 96% between 2019 and 2020. So, based on this data, EV charging, a desirable feature, will result in higher rent and sales premium between 67% for any site. It makes properties more desirable from a tenancy perspective. You're attracting better quality tenants. And more importantly, installing EV chargers really helps you achieve those green building certifications as well. And those certifications in turn could lead to other financial incentives like environmental tax credits, etc. And lastly, you're preparing your site from a future-proofing perspective. So as EVs on the road starts to increase, you're preparing your site to support the necessary infrastructure required. And with EV charging, you're also enabling an important movement among the different businesses. More than 85% of fleet managers today think that electrification of fleets is a key step towards decarbonization of your business operations. And reliable and efficient charging infrastructure is key to enabling electrification of fleets, because essentially that results in reduced operational costs. You're future-proofing your business because you're really preparing for that EV revolution, and then it results in improved brand reputation as well. And when you're thinking about EV charging infrastructure from a fleet charging perspective, there are certain key considerations that need to be kept in mind in order to make sure that the journey is seamless and cost efficient. So essentially, charging infrastructure could be scaled up and down for your specific fleet needs. You could use renewable energy to enable a deeper decarbonization impact. And lastly, smart management techniques can help you really optimize those operations. With that, I'll turn it over to Brett, who'll touch on both the environmental and financial returns of EV charging.
Thanks, Abdullah. So I'll start with looking at some of the environmental returns that installing EV charging can create. The first one I want to touch on is corporate sustainability goals. Adding EV chargers to your business demonstrates that your business embraces technologies that make the planet a cleaner and safer place to live. This is a strong signal to employees, to business partners, and potential investors that your business is socially conscious and aware of where the world is going in the future. In today's exceptionally competitive job market, it's important to think about how you can provide additional values to your employees. And we see EV charging at the workplace as a key component of the employee value prop going forward. By providing EV driving employees with choice parking spots that are close to the front of the building and enabling to charge their vehicles at work for free, you reward your employees for taking green action. On-site EV chargers are highly visible and demonstrate to the market that you're serious about making an impact in the world. As of 2021, over 80% of US businesses had announced a corporate sustainability strategy, and we only see this percentage going up in the near term. Electrifying transportation is a straightforward mechanism of making these corporate sustainability commitments actionable. And more, in addition to the greenhouse gas savings, progress on these sustainability strategies is increasingly becoming a requirement to attracting investment, with 65% of investors considering ESG metrics when making investment decisions. The second green benefit that we wanted to touch on today is the path to green certifications for real estate. EV charging contributes to some of the leading green building certifications in the US, and these are increasingly important for real estate developers and operators. Using the LEED program as an example, businesses are awarded points for either installing chargers in 5% of their parking spaces and reserving these spots for electric vehicles, or putting the electrical infrastructure in the ground to make 10% of their parking spaces EV ready. We've put some of the benefits of these green building certifications up on the slide, and these will be very familiar to people involved in the real estate market. They include tax credits and breaks, increased financial value of the real estate portfolio, enhanced marketability and the ability to attract those high quality tenants that Abdullah talked about, higher rent, density zoning bonuses. They can give you an advantage when you're looking at permitting with municipalities, and they can open up some eligibility for grants and low interest loans. And then the next slide, we're going to look at one of the more obvious benefits that comes to mind when you think about electrifying transportation, and that's the emissions reduction potential. In the US, transportation is the largest source of emissions, representing about 38% of emissions from the US economy. Decarbonizing transportation, as a result, is going to be a key focus going forward as governments and organizations seek to meet net zero goals. On this slide, we've taken a look at the emissions reduction potential of a small site that has 4 level 2 charging ports and 2 DCFC fast charging electric vehicle ports. This example site at current utilization levels would remove about 190 tons of CO2 from the atmosphere every year, which is equivalent to planting 8,600 trees or taking 37 internal combustion engine cars off the road. You heard me reference on the last slide, and you'll see it as a bit of a recurring theme in this presentation. We talk about the average utilization and look at some of the numbers at that average level. While we think this is a useful benchmark to evaluate how the market will grow in the coming years, it is very important to keep in mind that utilization varies significantly across sites, with the top 10% of sites generating about half of the charging activity in the US. The graph on this slide is useful to show how the greenhouse gas reduction will scale as charger utilization scales, as EV adoption increases in the near term. And we also think it's a useful tool to look at to evaluate the potential for CO2 reduction today, given an estimate of your charger utilization. So now that we've had a chance to take a look at some of the environmental benefits, let's dive into the financial numbers around EV charging. The first financial benefit that we want to touch on today is government incentives. I mentioned earlier that transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the US, and therefore it's a key focus for governments looking to meet their net zero commitments. We've really seen governments put their money where their mouth is when it comes to this issue, and they've rolled out several programs to help offset the cost of EV chargers and develop a network that will enable people to switch to electric vehicles without the fear of running out of electricity as they go on their trips. Depending on site characteristics, incentives can fund up to 90% of the capital costs associated with EV charger installation. The first incentive that we've plotted on our graph here is NYSERDA's Make Ready program. Most sites under this program will have up to 90% of their installation costs covered by the program, and there are adders to push this percentage to 100% for sites in disadvantaged communities, or a smaller incentive of 50% available if the charger will not be made available to the public. And this first incentive covers the installation costs only, so it doesn't help out with the hardware cost of putting the actual physical charger on the site. The second incentive that we want to talk about today is the Inflation Reduction Act. And as part of that act that was passed in the summer of 2022, there's a 30% investment tax credit that applies to the hardware and the installation costs for chargers that are being installed in disadvantaged communities. And lastly, the third incentive that we have on our charts here is a New York State tax credit that it is up to $500 or $5,000 to offset the capital costs that are not covered by other incentives. So as you can see on the chart, these incentives are all additive, and you can take advantage of all of them depending on the site that you're looking to install chargers. That being said, there are provisions in place to make sure that you're not double dipping and getting government money for the same cost twice. I can go back one slide of this, sorry. So in addition to these incentives that are currently taking applications, there are also a couple of upcoming programs that we wanted to highlight. The first one is the DCFC per plug replacement program. This program was in place to offset some of the operational costs associated with using DCFC fast chargers. This program was recently canceled, but we are expecting a replacement program, which is again focused on the operational costs, to be announced in the coming months. The second upcoming incentive program that we're keeping a close eye on is the NEVI program. NEVI is a federal program that seeks to incentivize EV charging deployment along key travel corridors. The federal government has pushed the responsibility down to the states to allocate and figure out how they're going to use this funding, and we're expecting state level plans to come out with a little bit more details over the course of 2023. Overall, on the incentive side, there's a lot of incentives available, and our team at OYA can help you evaluate your site against the different programs that are available. And under our turnkey energy as a service solution, we'll take care of all of these incentive applications for you to make sure that the funding is being maximized. So the next incentive that we want to talk about is charging session fees. And this is probably the one that comes to mind most often when you think about the financial benefits of EV charging. Similar to a gas station, businesses can charge drivers a fee when they stop to charge their cars at their station. And one of the benefits of OYA's EV charging solution is that we let our clients keep 100% of the charging session revenue that they earn from their site. We also give our clients the flexibility to set prices as they see fit. So a couple of examples, we have some clients that are interested in profiting directly from the charging session revenue, and they can set their charging session prices accordingly. On the other hand, we have clients that are more interested in a lot of the other ancillary benefits that having EV chargers on their site provides, and they may be more interested in offering free or heavily discounted charging to enable them to meet those goals of hitting those other ancillary benefits. I've put a couple examples of where market charging fees are right now across New York along the side of the slide, to give everybody an example of how much it costs people to charge their cars. But like I mentioned, when you're partnering with Oya, you have full flexibility to set these prices as you see fit. The second ancillary benefit that we want to talk about is additional retail sales. Abdullah touched on the idea that EV drivers tend to stop at business locations to charge their vehicles. And there's starting to be some good data available to quantify exactly what this means for the retailers. On the chart, we have plotted the additional retail sales per year for a grocery store with a single fast charging port at their site. Data has shown that EV chargers can increase dwell time by 50% and can result in new retail sales of about 48 cents per minute of EV charging. This is a benefit that's often overlooked by people when they're thinking about installing EV chargers, and I think it's important to consider it because it can meaningfully improve the economics of installing chargers at your site. Another one of the ancillary revenue streams that we wanted to touch on is specific to EV dealerships. And EV chargers on site allow EV dealerships to unlock the potential of selling electric vehicle cars, as this is increasingly becoming a requirement from the OEMs. Having chargers at car dealerships can help position the dealership well internally by giving it access to exclusive marketing and sales resources, giving a priority allocation for new vehicle allocation, and increasing the dealership's visibility across the dealership network. EV charging at dealerships can also help in the sales cycle. Automotive surveys have suggested that many customers have questions about EV charging that they need to have answered before they're willing to make a purchase. Having EV chargers at the same spot where you're selling the cars can help answer these questions and get potential clients comfortable with this important part of their electric vehicle purchase. Many dealerships are also choosing to make their chargers available to the public. This has a couple benefits. First is the ability to charge charging session revenue and earn revenue from that revenue stream. The second is increased visibility from people who are stopping into the dealership to charge their cars. And the third is that by having chargers publicly available, you maximize the government incentives that your site is eligible for. The stats across the bottom of the slide show the importance of dealerships getting set up to handle electric vehicles as soon as possible. With 69% of consumers interested in buying an EV for their next vehicle, dealerships would be closing off a significant portion of the market if they don't move fast to install chargers on their site. With that, I'll pass it back to Abdullah to summarize and conclude everything we've talked about today.
Thank you, Brett. So now that we've looked into the strategic, environmental, and financial rationale for EV charging, how does it all tie together? In conclusion, as a result of supportive policies, increasing gas car cost parity, and growing EV adoption, the business case for EV charging is evident and is quite strong. Investments in EV charging infrastructure over time are just going to essentially improve the returns as EV adoption continues to grow. Financially, the incentive programs as well as tax credits offset the costs of putting these EV charging stations in and associated operations. Moreover, once these EV charging stations are operational, the ancillary revenue streams as well as the direct charging session revenue streams provide additional financial upside to the host of the EV charging stations. When it comes to the environmental aspect, EV charging helps you achieve your corporate sustainability goals. It's a highly visible mechanism of doing so. You attract talent and you retain talent that's environmentally conscious. And most importantly, you're making a statement that your business is committed to sustainability and you're establishing your brand's image and reputation on that premise. Lastly, when it comes to the strategic benefits of EV charging, you're looking at expanding your customer base, you're looking at retaining your existing customer base, enhancing the property value or the real estate value, as well as two other benefits when it comes to electrifying fleets with on-site EV chargers. And sometimes those EV chargers can also be dual purpose, where you're also serving the purpose of employee charging. So essentially, when you think about the environmental, strategic, and financial benefits of EV charging, they far outweigh the costs that are involved in putting this infrastructure in the ground. So why is it important to start installing EV charging stations today, or to start thinking about these initiatives and incorporate them into your business? Those who install EV charging today and capitalize on this growing market will avoid challenges such as deadlines, competing for resources, competing for equipment lead times, and such. Before this technology becomes mainstream, it's an opportunity for early adopters to really just take the advantage and get ahead of the game. Risks that are involved in waiting include falling behind competitors, missing out on favorable government incentives, facing compliance fines in certain jurisdictions. So with the rapid EV growth, the financial incentives on your side and our turnkey solution, now is the time to act. Oya's energy transition platform is essentially based on eliminating the barriers to adoption of EV charging and other clean technologies. We've built a holistic energy transition platform that's able to deploy EV charging integrated with solar and battery storage and other clean technologies on the site. And our approach over there is to partner with strategic technology providers and really eliminate that requirement for upfront capital when it comes to these projects. It's important to note that we're able to tailor these solutions for your business needs. So, some sites might be fit for EV charging and storage only, while others might be fit for the full suite, and we're able to work with you in order to figure out what makes the most amount of sense. The key value proposition over here to remember is that we're really there as the transition partner, as well as the executor for these projects, all the way from planning to construction, operations, and maintenance of these projects. And we work with a multitude of clients, real estate investment trusts, retail brands, municipalities, cities, dealerships. So, if you have any questions about EV charging or other energy transition technologies, please feel free to connect with us and we can jointly figure out what the specific business case for your site looks like based on the framework that we discussed today, and then assessing potential for other technologies at your site.
Thank you so much, Abdullah and Brett, for all of your expert knowledge that you shared with everybody today. So we had, I just remind everybody, if you do have any questions, please submit them in the chat. We did have one come in on LinkedIn, and Paul asks, besides NRCAN, are there any other programs in Canada to support / incentivize EV charging infrastructure?
Maybe I'll answer that. So the NRCAN federal charging infrastructure program is, I believe, the most significant grant program in Canada when it comes to charging infrastructure specifically. There may be other municipal level incentive programs as well that not only benefit or support the implementation of EV charging, but other technologies as well. But if you were to take a look at it from a high level perspective, federally, that's what's available and covers a major portion of the project costs.
Thanks, Abdullah. So Ayush Patel, he asked rather, currently studying engineering in sustainable energy. Good choice. Would you please tell us about the recycling of EV batteries and how can EV batteries be recycled? That's a little bit outside our purview, but maybe Abdullah, you can help out with this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not an expert in battery recycling, but you know, when a lot of the automakers started making commitments to putting an end to internal combustion engine vehicles, there was a lot of momentum in the industry talking about, the environmental impact of batteries and what the potential for essentially recycling or reusing that is in order to make sure that, the manufacturing process for EVs is also environmentally sustainable. There's a lot of studies and research that's done that's supportive that there is essentially a second life for the EV batteries once it's sort of done its time serving the vehicle itself. For example, there's a few programs that Audi has implemented where they're recycling the batteries and essentially putting them in smaller transportation vehicles across Asia, I believe. So there's initiatives of that scale that are currently suggesting that there is a second life battery for these batteries once they're done with their fulfilling their purpose for EVs. And I'm sure as the technology gets more mature, we'll get more quantified data on what that looks like.
And I think maybe the other benefit to touch on there is that we're also seeing some cool startups that are looking at other materials in their batteries that maybe there's less of a need to recycle those hazardous materials that you're currently seeing in the electric vehicle batteries.
Okay, so there's a follow-up question, and maybe we'll just leave that to the side for now because Jamie has a great question here. Jamie writes, I have property in Virginia. I'm planning on building 4 townhomes. I want to put EV charging in each of the new townhomes. Can you help?
For sure, Jamie. I think we should definitely connect. Level 2 charging is becoming increasingly important in multi-unit as well as other residential settings. We've noticed similar sort of requests come from dealerships as well as other entities. So I think we can definitely take this offline and help you figure this out.
So Jamie, what I would suggest is you just make note of Abdullah's and Brett's email addresses and phone numbers and just reach out to them directly, or you can private message myself or Abdullah and just let us know how we can contact you. Okay, so Wes is asking, I have submitted, okay, he's talking about leasing land. And he's talking about, yes, 1,000 acres, and that there's not a program in Idaho for solar, but you keep seeing solar farms popping up in Idaho, and you have a couple of solar companies. Okay, so this is specifically about like our land leasing program and not about EV charging. What I would recommend, Wes, is if you are interested in leasing land, please write to Abdullah and Brett and we can connect you with like our leasing program. I don't think that we're necessarily the right people to answer your question about like solar leasing programs in Idaho. So it'd be better for you to connect with somebody directly here on our team, and we can definitely help you with that. That's not a problem. Okay, and then let's get back to Ayush's follow-up question is, will Oil Renewables be looking at EV batteries in the future?
At this point, we're focused on essentially looking at battery storage from a perspective of making the operations of EV chargers themselves more streamlined. So, looking at demand charges and peak shaving. As we see the business case develop for the specific EV car batteries, we're always open to new business opportunities. So, we'll definitely keep an eye out for that, given that we're big in the transportation electrification at the moment with our energy transition platform. But at the moment, we're focused on deployment of EV charging infrastructure and pairing that with battery storage.
We have another question coming in from LinkedIn, and Yvette is asking, another student who's saying she's doing her thesis about the implementation of renewable options. And her question specifically is about the Caribbean and transitioning over to renewable energy. So she's asking, how can I, as a Canadian, fund a project to bring EV charging infrastructure to the Caribbean and change management to EVs?
Yeah, I think, like as a Canadian, bringing that technology over to other parts of the world, there's several things that you can do. I think the best one that comes to my mind right now is essentially looking at the EV charging industry landscape here, not only in Canada but also in the US. Really learning and capitalizing on the lessons that we've sort of seen from the early years of deployment over the last 5 years. So how to deliver the best customer experience, what are the best performing technologies when it comes to fast charging, level 2 charging, what sites are best suited for level 2 charging versus DC fast charging, and then more importantly, what is the power system infrastructure that's required to support widespread adoption and deployment of this charging infrastructure, and how can you make it most cost effective in terms of operations of these EV charging stations, but also making sure that you're sourcing a lot of this charging infrastructure with clean energy. So there's a lot of experience that we can capitalize on in North America from all the projects that you see. And then I think secondly, not something that I've been laser focused on, but I'm sure that there are some business development or other funding programs that allow for a cross-border type of partnership that may even contribute commercially to this project. So that can be further looked into.
Yvette has a bit of a follow-up question, and she's saying that she is seeking funding for this type of program. Okay.
Yeah, at the top of my mind, that's something that we have not currently focused on, or nothing comes to my mind right now. If something does, we'll get in touch with you, and perhaps we can sort of give you some leads as to where that information can be found.
Okay, so I don't see any more questions coming in, so let's end it there. Abdullah, do you have any last thoughts, or Brett, do you have any last thoughts that you would like to leave everybody with?
I think, from my perspective, we'll again just reiterate our approach here at OAS to really educate our potential client base on what it entails when you start to embark on this energy transition journey. And we always encourage businesses to get in touch with us in order to sort of figure out where to start, and if anything. And today's webinar is a demonstration of how we really start from early on, which is we can even help you understand what that business case looks like and really help you champion that within your organization in order to get the necessary momentum to get this going. So reach out to us either via website or our personal contact information over there, and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Okay, so as you were speaking, I think you inspired a couple of people to ask some questions. We'll just answer 2 last ones and then we'll end it there. So Charles asks, and he's talking about the slide that shows the examples of the charging station at the store. And he's asking how much charging would come from the panels and how much purchased from community solar.
Yeah, so that really varies from site to site. I can tell you that fast charging infrastructure is quite power intensive. So the expectation to fully power a large charging hub that's currently shown in front of you will likely depend on how much space you've got on the site, right? So if you could pair it with enough rooftop solar and canopy, that's possible. Otherwise, as your question alluded, there's going to be a certain proportion that you're still going to be drawing off the grid versus what you're generating on site, and it all really depends on the individual site specific characteristics. So if you have a specific site in mind, how we generally go about it is we evaluate that site and really take a look at what the solar generation on site could look like, and we can then see how much of how much of the charging infrastructure would be powered by the grid versus on-site. And then secondly, as it relates to community solar subscription, how that would work is that essentially enables you to get a bill reduction on your electricity bill. So essentially, if your electricity bill goes high because of the additional power consumption due to EV chargers, some of that is going to be offset, some or all, depending on that particular site, is going to be offset by the bill credits that you generate by being a community solar subscriber. So connect with us if you have a specific site in mind, and we can definitely look at what the specific quantities look like.
Thanks, Abdullah. So one last question, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name. It's Sri, and they're asking, what is a minimum viable installation? Any approximate investment needed?
So, I can, from experience, I think we can tell you that installing more EV charging stations naturally is going to be more cost economic. I think at a particular site, we've noticed that at least putting in or co-locating 3 to 4 level 2 chargers is kind of where all sites are starting from. Anything lesser than that might not be the most cost-effective route, but at the same point, it really depends on your site, because you may have enough power infrastructure at your site where it's just a very minimal cost to install one charging station versus more. So really would vary on the particular situation.
Thanks, Abdullah. So that's where we're going to end it. Thank you, everybody, for listening and for attending. And thanks, Abdullah and Brett, for their great conversation. And thank you to Sierra, who did the design for the deck, or at least contribute to a good portion of it. If you have any questions, Abdullah, can you flip to the screen? Please feel free to reach out to us directly. You can contact us by email or by simply phoning us. Our contact information is there. We would love to hear from you, and would love to hear about any projects that you have. If you're curious about having any more information about what EV charging is, our website is always available. And in the next day or so, we will be posting a recording of this webinar in case you would like to listen to some part again, or to share it with somebody else who would be interested. So thanks, everybody, for listening, and have a great rest of your day.